The champagne flute slipped from Victoria Blackstone's manicured fingers, shattering against the marble floor of the 52nd floor boardroom. Crystal fragments scattered like her carefully constructed composure, each piece reflecting the fluorescent lights that had become her prison. She hadn't slept in 36 hours. The hostile takeover documents blurred before her eyes, and for the first time in her ruthless climb to becoming the youngest female CEO of a Fortune 500 company, Victoria felt the weight of her billion-dollar empire crushing down on her chest like a stone. At 34, she commanded respect in every room she entered. Her tailored Armani suits were armor, her razor-sharp intellect a weapon that had carved through competitors and colleagues alike. But tonight, alone in the gleaming tower that bore her company's name, she felt smaller than the scattered glass at her feet. The merger that would cement her legacy was falling apart. Her board was questioning her leadership, and the press was circling like vultures, waiting for the Ice Queen to finally crack. Victoria barely noticed the soft sound of wheels rolling across the polished floor. She was bent over, picking up the larger shards when a pair of worn work boots appeared in her peripheral vision. Looking up, she saw a man in his late 30s wearing a Navy janitor's uniform, his name tag reading Marcus in simple block letters. His face carried the weathered lines of someone who'd lived through storms, but his eyes held an unexpected gentleness. Without a word, Marcus knelt beside her, carefully collecting the dangerous fragments. His movements were methodical, protective, ensuring she wouldn't cut herself. Victoria found herself frozen, watching the stranger's calloused hands work with surprising grace. She couldn't remember the last time someone had shown her such simple kindness without expecting anything in return. "You don't have to," she began, but Marcus shook his head gently, continuing his task. When the last piece was safely disposed of, he reached into his cart and pulled out a small stack of brown paper napkins from what appeared to be a child's lunch bag. He handed her one without speaking, his eyes meeting hers for just a moment before he began to quietly roll his cart away. Victoria stared down at the napkin in her hand, confused by the weight it seemed to carry. As Marcus's footsteps faded down the corridor, she unfolded it absently, expecting nothing more than rough paper towel. Instead, she found herself looking at careful pencil writing in the margins around what appeared to be a child's drawing of two stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. "Daddy," the note read in a 7-year-old's careful script, "I know you work really hard cleaning offices to take care of me. Mrs. Peterson said you're a hero because heroes help people even when nobody's watching. I drew this for you because you make everything better. I love you more than all the stars. Your superhero daughter, Emma. P.S. Maybe someone else needs to know they're not alone too." Victoria's hands began to tremble. Below Emma's message, in Marcus's neat handwriting, were the words, "To whoever finds this, you matter, your struggles are valid. Tomorrow is a new day. Sometimes we all need someone to clean up the broken pieces so we can start again. Keep going." Tears Victoria hadn't allowed herself to shed in years began falling freely onto the napkin. This man, this single father working the night shift to provide for his daughter, had somehow seen through her billion-dollar facade to the broken person underneath. He hadn't offered advice or judgment. He'd simply shown up in her darkest moment and reminded her of her humanity. She found herself running to the elevator, her heels clicking urgently against the marble. Victoria caught Marcus just as he was preparing to move to the next floor. He looked surprised to see her, concern flickering across his weathered features. "The napkin," she said breathlessly, holding it up. "Your daughter's message." Marcus's expression softened, and for the first time, he smiled. "Emma insists on packing extra napkins in my lunch every day. Says they're for emergencies." He paused, studying Victoria's tear-streaked face. "She has this theory that sometimes people need more than just clean floors. They need to know someone cares." "How does she know?" Victoria whispered. "How does a 7-year-old understand what grown-ups can't?" "Kids see what we forget to look for," Marcus replied gently. "Emma lost her mom 2 years ago. Cancer. Since then, she's been determined to help people feel less alone. Says sadness is like spilled milk, you can't put it back, but you can clean it up and start fresh." Victoria felt something fundamental shifting inside her chest. "What's her full name?" "Your daughter, Emma Rodriguez." "Why?" Victoria wiped her eyes, straightening her shoulders with new purpose. Because I want to meet the little girl who just saved my company. Over the next hour, Victoria found herself sitting on the floor of her executive office, sharing coffee from Marcus's thermos while he told her about Emma's dreams of becoming a teacher, about the medical bills that never seemed to end, about working 3 jobs to keep their small apartment. In return, Victoria found herself opening up about the loneliness at the top, about sacrificing relationships for success, about forgetting why she'd started climbing in the first place. Emma wants to help kids who are sad like she was, Marcus said quietly. She talks about starting a foundation someday, helping families going through what we went through. But right now, we're just focused on keeping our heads above water. That's when Victoria knew exactly what she had to do. The next morning, the business world watched in shock as Victoria Blackstone called an emergency press conference. Instead of announcing the merger that everyone expected, she stood before the cameras and told the story of a janitor's daughter who'd reminded her what true leadership looked like. Effective immediately, Victoria announced, Blackstone Industries will be establishing the Emma Rodriguez Foundation for Family Support Services. We're committing $50 million initially to help families facing medical crises, to provide scholarships for children who've lost parents, and to support single parents pursuing education and career advancement. The reporters were stunned into silence. This was not the Victoria Blackstone they knew, the corporate shark who'd built her empire on calculated moves and ruthless efficiency. Furthermore, Victoria continued, her voice growing stronger, I'm announcing our new employee advancement program. Every member of our support staff, our janitors, security guards, food service workers, maintenance teams, will have access to full educational benefits, healthcare expansion, and leadership development opportunities. Because I've learned that sometimes the people who clean up our messes can teach us the most about building something beautiful. Marcus, watching from the back of the room with Emma on his shoulders, felt tears streaming down his face. Emma clapped her hands excitedly, not fully understanding the magnitude of what was happening but sensing the happiness in the room. 6 months later, Marcus walked into his first day of classes at the City University, where he was pursuing a degree in social work, fully funded by the Emma Rodriguez Foundation. Victoria had offered him a position in her company, but Marcus chose to stay connected to his calling of helping others, now as a family counselor specializing in grief support. Emma had become Victoria's unofficial advisor on matters of heart overhead. The little girl would visit the office once a week, armed with more napkins and drawings, helping Victoria remember that success wasn't measured only in stock prices and market share, but in the lives you touched along the way. The merger Victoria had been so desperate to complete fell through, but it no longer mattered. Her company's stock initially dropped when she announced the foundation, but within a year, it had soared to record highs as consumers and investors alike were drawn to a corporation that prioritized humanity alongside profit. Victoria still worked long hours, but now she did it with purpose that extended beyond her own ambition. She'd learned that true power wasn't about being untouchable at the top of a tower. It was about building bridges strong enough to hold everyone up together. On the anniversary of that night, Victoria kept a framed napkin on her desk, Emma's original drawing with Marcus's message of hope. Beside it sat a photo of the first family helped by the foundation. A single mother of 3 who'd been able to complete nursing school while her children received tutoring and emotional support after their father's sudden death. Every evening when she left the office, Victoria would stop by Marcus's station. Sometimes they'd talk about Emma's latest school project or share coffee and quiet conversation. Other times, they'd simply nod to each other in comfortable understanding. 2 people who'd learned that the most profound moments of change often came disguised as ordinary encounters with extraordinary hearts. The napkin had been right. Tomorrow was indeed a new day, and sometimes the greatest transformations began with someone simply showing up to help clean up the broken pieces, asking for nothing in return except the chance to remind another human being that they mattered, that they were not alone, and that hope could be found in the most unexpected places. In the end, Victoria had discovered that building an empire meant nothing if you forgot to build a legacy of kindness along the way. And sometimes, that legacy started with nothing more than a napkin, a child's love, and a father's quiet wisdom about what it truly meant to be a hero in someone else's story.